So cold, it's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold. Boot heels and chat, flashlights dance, I can't make a beat. Blood, sweat, so cotton against my skin, and now I lay me down to sleep. So cold, it's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold. These frozen hands will clutch the broom. Another darkest, dreary room. These sunken eyes will shake you, and it couldn't come too soon. Oh, on the coldest full moon. Oh, the night, the coldest full moon. Oh, the night, the coldest full moon. Oh, the night, the coldest full moon. Pegged by footprints in the snow, but it won't be the last time, I know. The sun will rise again and leave behind all the night, the coldest full moon. Oh, the night, the coldest full moon. Oh, the night, the coldest full moon. Oh, the night, the coldest full moon.
Thank you. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you. I said earlier, I think with all these amazing musicians in our midst, I'm tempted to just say, Happy Easter, the Lord has risen. Now, back to the music, right? But you know that's not going to happen. You know he's going to get his time in. You just know that's going to happen. I want to personally take a moment. I don't do this often, but you know, when you turn 89, you get to have a little special recognition. And so, Florence, when you bring us donuts, you get a lot of recognition. So happy birthday, my dear. Thank you. You're a blessing in our life. Never feel complete on Sunday without my Florence hug. So you're a blessing to our community. So it's a wonderful day, Easter, and I've always been intrigued by this. My friend of mine is here today. My friend Jeff and his amazing husband Andrew are here today visiting us, and Jeff and I get together and chat from time to time. And I was sharing with him how we're saying basically how we have this philosophy, and I've been teaching science of mind and metaphysics for 30 years now, and I believe it. It's in my being. But there is still that part of me that was raised Southern Baptist and had a different theology about what this day is all about. And so I always have this, okay, I'm going to talk truth today. I'm going to share what I know. And then my little grandma Linus is always on my shoulder going, now you were raised a Baptist, right? So I'm going to try and bridge that, because what I've discovered is I feel so blessed to have been raised in that community and to have had the opportunity to study Bible and to learn Bible. And then I took a little time off, a little hiatus, 15 years. But when I came back into spiritual community, it was a community very similar to this, and I began to have my mind expanded to possibility. You see, one of the reasons I left church was because I felt like the club was a bit too exclusive. That people were saying, we are going to heaven, and everybody else, not so much. And that never resonated with me. Even as a small child, I thought, if there's only one God, then really aren't we all just talking about the same thing? So after all these years away from church, I walked into a community similar to this and was blown away. One, there was no Old Rugged Cross being sung. There was joyful expression and love feeling, and the minister stood up and said, in this moment we bless all priests and all rabbis, all ministers and teachers of every faith, for we know there's one God. And I thought, wow, I found my place. And so for the last 30 years, I've been hanging out here. The irony of this declarative statement that I made many years before as a young person that I would never go to church again is never really lost on me. So it turns out I go quite often. But, so I always find this wonderful opportunity to speak to the Easter story and how magnificent it is. And so I have no desire at all to try and have a theological argument about why we're right and they're wrong or any of that kind of stuff. It's just my understanding of the message has become even more powerful. You see, when I grew up, I had a religion about Jesus. But now I feel like I have a religion of Jesus. And there's a whole different energy when you start to look at these lessons, these biblical lessons that I learned as a child in a simple way as beautiful, magnificent mythos, mysteries, mythology that help us to understand things. You see, I have a great, great affinity for mythology. It is something that we have had as humanity throughout the ages. Because you have to know that from every time, since we kind of got conscious, we had to start asking ourselves questions like, where did we come from? How did we get here? What is the meaning and purpose of my life? Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? What the heck? And so we've begun to tell stories and try and interpret our understanding. And so when I speak about the Christian mythology, I don't mean it in any way to be demeaning. In fact, for me, what I've come to realize is that things do not have to be factually accurate to be spiritually true. And in fact, some of the stories throughout time have been told not to be factual recantations of a situation, but to help us to understand the larger story. So today I'd like to speak to this larger story that we are all engaged in. Last week we talked about Palm Sunday and how that symbolized Jesus returning to Jerusalem and the understanding and the idea at the time and what people who had begun to follow this amazing teacher were beginning to think, aha, this is the prophesied Messiah. This is the great leader for our nation. You see, Israel had been in bondage. Israel was once a great nation with powerful temples and this amazing thing, and then they went into bondage. And so the prophecy was that a great leader, a new Messiah, would come and lead them back to restore their greatness. And so it is in this context that Jesus is moving through this story. And so, of course, we talked about how he returned into Jerusalem and everybody laid down the palms, which was the kind of the equivalent of a red carpet treatment. This amazing thing is happening. But then the story unfolds, and we realize that there's a whole nother level of things going on. And so we have this Last Supper, this beautiful, humbling moment when Jesus is teaching his disciples and preparing them for what is to come and setting up something that's very powerful. I love the symbology of this Christed being washing the feet of his disciples. You see, we have to understand the humility in which Jesus lived his life, I think, to understand the message. And so while people were expecting a great worldly leader, he was teaching us about something deeper. I think of the woman at the well, and he said, if you will drink of the water of life, you will never thirst again. You see, if we go to outer circumstance to try and find our salvation, if we try and find our comfort in the ways of the world, we will thirst again. We will hunger again. But when we come to that inner spring of life, then we will never thirst again because we have tapped into the greater spiritual dimension of who we are. And so the Last Supper happens, and then and Jesus goes off into the garden. One of my favorite stories is the story of Jesus in the garden. Because Jesus knows what's coming. Jesus knows that this is not going to be the Hallmark card moment that everybody is prophesizing, but it's going to get real, as we would say today, right? And so Jesus invites his disciples into the garden, and he says, "Won't you remain awake with me as I go into prayer?" And what do? They fall asleep. He said, "Could you not stay awake for but 1 hour?" You see, there is that temptation. I'm watching it even now. As when things get difficult, do we remain conscious? Or do we fall asleep? And so in this, as the story is told in the garden, Jesus is having this conversation with the divine, and he has a very real human conversation. He says, "Father, God, Abba, take this away." Right? Have you ever had that prayer? Like, no, this is not, did you listen to the prayer? Because this was not in it, right? We all do that, right? We go to God, we say, "God, give me guidance," and then we get insight, and we're like, "Oh, no, not that. No, I want the easy plan," right? And so this very human surrender and ask again, "Please take this cup away." And then finally, that moment of surrender, he says, "Not my will, but thine be done." Now, I've often heard people describe God's will as how we justify bad things. But I want you to understand that the divine will is always for greater self-expression. Everything that is alive, everything that is a part of the one life is always seeking its highest self-expression. It's how we know life is. So within the seed, the tiniest seed, there's an intelligence that knows how to take that seed and bring it into full expression. Within our physical beings, there is a divine seed that knows how to bring our highest self into being. So when we make the surrender, the primary surrender to the divine will, it is not that we are giving up something. Well, I lied. We are. Usually what we are giving up is our ego. Because our ego loves to be in control. Our ego loves to be in charge. Our ego loves to make plans and then put those plans out there and then expect that our plan will unfold just as we had planned it, and we get upset with other people when they don't follow our plan. Or some people I've met do. Maybe you don't. But the divine will says, you must surrender. You see, we are over and over, we get caught in our limited way of seeing. And so sometimes spiritual growth occurs because we just feel a divine discontent. We say, something's off, and I think I'll just go pursue a spiritual path. And I'll start studying, to find out what this divine longing is. That's a path for some. A more common path I've noticed is life kind of punches us in the gut. I got to do life differently. It's how I got here, right? It's how I got here. My life was clearly not working. And so I went in search of how to make my life work. And as long as it didn't have anything to do with church, I was going to be fine. I knew it. And a friend I met, we began talking and philosophizing. She said, you should go to the center that I go to. Now, luckily, because I knew, even though she called it a center, I know church when I see it, right? But luckily, I had low self-esteem and was easily guilted into things. So I said, okay, I'll do it, you know. And I walked into a community where the minister, they had two ministers. One was a woman. Weird. Everything in my little Southern Baptist mindset got blown. Boom, boom. People are hugging, laughing, clapping, having fun, celebrating life. It's like, oh, man, you guys are going to be in so much trouble. Having fun in church? Come on. But the minister did say, we believe in all paths to the divine. We pray for all spiritual leaders because the divine is bigger than any one path. And I said, aha, there's other people like me. So I'm grateful for my experience. But you see, Jesus in the garden is surrendering to the larger story. And symbolically, we will all be called at one point in our life to surrender to our larger story. And so the betrayal takes place. The betrayal takes place, and I have found in my lifetime that those who I perceived as betrayers actually have served me mightily. I was sharing how in my first ministry, I was young and excited about doing this spiritual community thing, and took a ministry that had been on some hard times, but was ready to go again. And within just a matter of time, we had it building and growing and thriving, and it was fun and it was exciting. And I walked into a meeting about 2 years into it, and the board of trustees invited me to begin a new ministry. Which is a much nicer way than saying they fired me. But I listened to Spirit. And I have to tell you, that was the most painful experience of my life. I was humiliated. People said horrible, mean things about me. Sent out letter to everybody that had ever been to our center saying horrible, mean things about me. I was humbled beyond measure. And so I looked at that, and sometimes what I find is when we look at the worst circumstance in our life, with some hindsight becomes the greatest gift in our life. Now, it is not a gift that I ever want to have again, just so you're clear. Once was good. But what I can see out of that experience, out of the humbleness, but the willingness to listen to Spirit, that everything that unfolded as my ministry from that point forward was powerful and profound, and may never have happened without that experience. Because I wanted to play, let's all be nice. Let's all say the right spiritual things because we're in spiritual community. And let's just let the luck that happens when people get together happen underneath the surface. Let's just all get along. What that taught me was let's be loving, let's be kind, and let's have authentic, real conversations. Because here's what I know. Where two or more are gathered, there will be politics. It's scriptural, look it up. Right? Because you have different points of view. And so in spiritual community, it can get very ugly because everybody's going to be so spiritual. We used to say in the South, bless their heart. Bless their little heart. Right? Bless you. So I learned about being loving, being kind, being compassionate, and being authentic and real so that a greater possibility could emerge. I don't know that would have happened had I not got to spend a little time on the cross. You see, so when life is crucifying some part of our being, we would do well, as Jesus did from the cross, to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I often use that prayer myself, only I'd say it this way, Father, forgive me, for I know not what I do. Right? Sometimes I just do stupid things. I don't know why. It seems smart at the time, but turns out not always so much. Right? But to move into that level of awareness that we're all being human, we speak about it every Sunday, that we're honoring our divinity, we're celebrating our humanity. We're all on a journey of discovery. And so can we be kind and compassionate? So the crucifixion comes. But you see, that is not the end of the story, is it? Course in Miracles says, for too long you have focused on the crucifixion and not the resurrection. The story is about what is born out of the surrender. When we say goodbye to our little life and allow the greater life, the larger life, to emerge through us. You see, Jesus would have been known as a carpenter, part-time rabbi, were it not for this story. And what was unleashed, whatever you believe about the resurrection and how that happened. Even the Gospels don't agree. 3 different versions right there. So we don't have to come to consensus around that. But symbolically, life always renews itself. When we're willing to die to our old way of being and to allow this larger story to emerge through us, then we get greater possibility and we unleash love and power in the world. Not the power of the world, but spiritual power. And for those of us that understand this, we understand what the Master was saying when he said, if you will seek this dimension, if you will seek this understanding, if you will seek this spiritual awareness, then from that, all things are added to you. And we care less about the form and the outcome, and more about how we are going to show up in the world, what presence, what quality of God's we will bring forward into the world to effect true change. You see, we're living in a time where there appears to be great darkness. There appears to be chaos. There appears to be confusion. There appears to be war. And it would be easy to look at all the things that are going on in the world and say, oh, ain't it awful? But you see, we're always in a moment of choice. And I believe part of what is happening in our world today is we are being called to our higher selves at a global level. And so we, each one of us, must make the choice. Will I choose love or will I choose fear? Will I choose to be the presence of the divine? So I think of Jesus on the cross saying, forgive them. You know, if you ever wanted to be justified in your upset and anger, that would be a good moment. You know? Like, God, I gave you the best 33 years of my life, and this is what I get, right? He was Jewish, I'm telling you. He was a rabbi. But he didn't. And through that act of surrender and grace, something powerful happened and is unleashed in the world. And it is a symbol that has served us for over 2,000 years of death and life reborn. Because life, Einstein taught us that energy never goes away. It's never destroyed. It only transmutes, it only changes. And so who we are is an energetic field, a loving presence. And each of us has a purpose. Each of us has meaning. Each of us, it matters. But we have to awaken to that spiritual truth for ourselves. We have to make the primary surrender to the divine will seeking its expression through us. You see, I see a lot of people in metaphysics, and it's good. It's a good starting point, that are all about the manifestation phase. Let's create stuff. Let's attract stuff. Let's make things happen. And that's good. You got to get that. But we can't afford to get stuck there. We have to be willing to move to that higher dimension once we get it, once we actually get it, that this loving presence only wants our highest good. Jesus spoke to it about the lilies in the field and the birds of the air. He said, gosh, if God loves those, how much more does he love you? You see, the divine will wants our highest self-expression. The divine is seeking its highest self-expression through us. But we must make that primary surrender. And sometimes that means we have to, okay, I want you to breathe. I got to give you a hard truth. Sometimes we have to let go of control. Take another deep breath. Okay, you're going to be okay. The good news is once we get it, it's like, why did I struggle so hard? You know, it takes a lot of time and energy to struggle your life through it. I was thinking about some of my 12-step friends who have gone through this experience, right? This is the perfect thing. In 12-step programs, people who are faced with addiction, and really we're all faced with addiction, they're just different varieties, but some is more pronounced. But there comes a point for every person to move into recovery that they have to be crucified. They have to hit what is called the bottom, which isn't a point in time or a place. It's whatever moment when they say, this clearly is not working, I will do life differently. And in that moment is when new life can emerge. But we can't continue to do life the way we used to do it to have a new experience. So the rebirth, the renewal takes place, and people move through that, and they find sobriety, and they find joy, and they find a new way of living in the world. And so Jesus spoke to us. See, I love being a Southern Baptist on Easter. I can just do Jesus all day long. But he said to us, you can't put new wine in old wineskins. What the heck? What he was saying is the new wine will burst the skin. But you see, perhaps he was not speaking of wine, but speaking of consciousness. And when we try and introduce our new way of thinking into our old way of being, something has to change. You either have to get a new container or you're going to blow out the old. Anybody had that happen? Had major spiritual experience and all of a sudden your life felt as if it fell apart? That's only temporary. There'll be some time in the womb, not in the womb, in the tomb. Womb came first, then the tomb. Okay, yeah, I got it. And finally, new life emerges triumphant. You see, the essence of this story comes back to us again and again. The history of religious experience is full of cases of people who are so changed so dramatically, sometimes in the twinkling of an eye, that the before hardly resembles the after. That who we were is no longer who we are. And so we can honor who we were, we can celebrate who we are, we just can't get back there. I'm always fascinated when people talk about the good old days. Like, really? Huh. Ernest Holmes said to us, to practice the presence of God is to awaken within us the Christ consciousness. Christ is God in the soul of humanity. The resurrection is the death of the belief that we are separated from God. For death is to the illusion alone, not to the reality. God never died. What happened was humanity awakened to life. The awakening must be a part on the humanity since God is already life. You see, life never changes. We change. And as we change and as we're willing, we evolve, we become more aware, we become more conscious, we become more compassionate, we become more forgiving, we become more loving, and we become a brighter light in the world. The Master said, don't hide your light. Let it shine brightly for all to see. I would say the same, let your light shine. Know who you are. Live from that truth. Speak with compassion and love, but speak the truth. Don't be afraid. Let go of the little story. The larger life wants to be born in each one of us. And in truth, the larger life wants to be born in our world. But we must move through the darkness so that love is revealed. Each of us is at choice. What will you choose? Love or fear? Today, my friends, I would invite you to join me in choosing love. Let this life emerge triumphant through you right now. Let us pray. As we breathe into the awareness of the one life, the one presence, the one power. There's an Eastern saying that says the 10,000 names are not it. So whatever name we call this one life, God, Allah, Yahweh, or the 10,000 other names, it is so much more than that. Let us just breathe into the energy and the presence of the one life ever present, always available, that is coursing through our being. It is the air. It is the breath that we breathe, and it is the intelligence behind our breathing. We are one with this one life, and so let us simply recognize that in this presence we do live, move, and have our very being. Let us join together in knowing that the one life is seeking its highest self-expression right now. And so let us open ourselves fully to this presence that is seeking to make itself known. Let us say yes to life, even as it is saying yes to us. Let us stand in the spiritual truth and reality that we are right now whole, perfect, complete spiritual beings. Let our light shine brightly. Let wholeness reveal itself as health and well-being and vitality. Let love reveal itself in joyful, satisfying, nurturing relationships. Let us forgive freely and fully. Let us know joy at the very core of our being. Let us recognize that we are abundant beings right here and right now because we are one with the source and substance of all that is. And so we move into a dynamic state of flow, joyously giving and graciously receiving of the divine bounty. We are letting our lives be a reflection of the divine life. We are choosing love, compassion, awareness, understanding. I invite you, if you're willing, to simply place your hand on your heart. And even as you feel your heart beating, you are knowing that it is the life of God beating its life through you. That thing that you seek is also seeking you. And so let us be willing in this moment to surrender, to release, to let go of the burden. And in its place, accept the glory, the triumph of the well-lived life. How good it is to know this truth, to stand firmly in the awareness that life is good and all is well. We give thanks for the many blessings in our lives, those seen and those yet to be realized. We simply enter into a state of profound gratitude. And giving thanks for the many blessings, we extend a blessing. We bless this spiritual community, this divine idea that is unfolding, knowing the right people, the right and perfect intelligence is working, that we are fully and freely supported in giving our gift to the world. We extend that blessing to our brothers and sisters across the planet. We're holding the high vision for a planet at peace, for a world that works for all, for a planet in harmony with itself that nurtures and sustains all life. And as always, as is our custom, we bless all priests, all rabbis, all ministers, all teachers of all faiths. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. Therefore, we honor and celebrate them all. In joy and gratitude, then, I'm simply speaking this word of truth on this beautiful Easter Sunday, where we are reminded that life is always triumphant. We celebrate the presence of the divine in each and every person. Giving thanks for all of this, I simply release this word into the law of mind, which knows how to go forth to bring forth the highest good for all concerned. And so in joy and in gratitude, I simply release this word, knowing it is so, as together we say, and so it is.